What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Sounds to Talk podcast with Dustin and Kyle. And we have a guest with us, TJ Petzold. And it's kind of cool. He's probably the most fearless guest we've ever had because we literally called him up and said, hey, you want to go do a podcast?
Total last minute.
He's like, yeah, I guess. And he showed up 2 minutes later. So we're doing this. But we actually have been wanting to get TJ on because his father, Kevin, was a large part of why I was able to move forward in my spiritual walk and have, he was very faithful. And I struggled with doubt. We talk about that a lot. I struggled with getting out of my comfort zone and praying for people, believing in the prayers when I pray for people. And he was a big influence on my life as far as doubt goes, because that dude was almost, I would say, like weirdly faithful. He had no doubt. I just felt like one time I had broke my ankle. I had like 6 screws and a plate in my ankle. And he literally pulled me aside to pray for me and told me that, God will dissolve metal in people's bodies. In my mind, I'm hysterically laughing.
You're like, what?
Yes. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing ever. And he laid hands on me and prayed, and I ended up going to the doctor and getting it taken out and stuff like that. Like, I just struggle with that type of faith, but I've heard stories.
Dissolved, removed by a doctor or something.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, he prayed it and made it happen. No. So Kevin has since passed and it was painful. Like he was like a father figure to me. He's obviously your father, TJ.
Yeah.
And he's been a close friend to a lot of people that are in my circle. And he was a big influence on me as far as helping me learn how to not doubt so much and just live out my faith. And actually, I owe it to him why I started praying for people and laying hands on people and praying for them. Because I remember when he first was having problems with his stomach and stuff, and we didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. He literally came to me and goes, I want you to lay hands on me and pray for me. And I think it's because he was encouraging me.
He knew you were.
He
you
knew
were
I struggled, and he's like, out of all the people right now that could do this, I want Kyle to do it because he knew like he needed to build my faith. He was that type of person.
Push you, yeah.
And so I just think it'd be cool to talk about Kevin a little bit today. And
sure.
And so we've been trying to get TJ on to do that. So why not last minute, right?
Yeah.
Well, and fun fact here is TJ is married to my cousin, so that's how I know TJ. And
it's crazy how it all
met Kevin
comes full circle.
through that, which I didn't know him as long as you did, obviously. But the time I did know Kevin, man, we had some very interesting conversations, especially once he found out I was connected with you, Kyle, and he kind of talked to me a little bit about God and stuff, which I thought was pretty cool and bold.
Oh, and he was stubborn as all get out. Everything that we would do, like he had some reason why, oh, he didn't like Macs. So no, we can't use, Apple products.
Don't even get me started with that.
The whole premise was I wanted to make an app and he's like, oh, we don't need an app. We can just do this and this, that. He was funny, man.
It was like we know we've tried doing apps with other programs we've done, and there's a side that he had an understanding about. But yes, he's very stubborn.
But I will say, out of anybody, like as far as thinking outside the box, that was Kevin. And like there wasn't anything that he wouldn't figure out and do.
That's half the reason why we don't get stuff done, though.
Yeah,
there's always a new box.
You just got to
something
go
new in the box,
But his stubbornness, I think, is why he was so faithful because he just believed it. And it was like 110% belief, and we talk about the struggle with doubt and everything. And to be honest, there
didn't seem to be a lot of doubt there.
No. And that's still a problem for me, but I think back to him and, we'll get into the God stories with it a lot, but like we're now that he's passed, seeing a lot of signs, he had this number, like his number was 9/11. And he had so many different stories of why this 9/11 would come up in certain instances in his life that he knew it was from God. And he did so many things because of it. Like he bought a car because of it. I remember they went out and they weren't even like really looking to get a car, but they thought it'd be cool. And they bought this car because the final price or whatever came out to where 9/11 was in it and stuff. And he felt like it was a nudge from God. And he ended up buying it because of that. He just had crazy stories like that. And now since he's passed, I see that number all the time. And I, talking to TJ, he does too. And it's like, it's always in that moment when you need to know like that God's got you in something.
Yeah. You're going to have doubts, anxiety.
Yeah. You're not even looking for the number and it'll pop up. It'll be 9/11, that'll be the time, or you'll see it. Sometimes I've seen it in my mileage on my car, in a license plate, just Random weird
address
things.
on a building, whatever you're driving down.
Yeah.
Random street sign has it on it.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get into some of those stories. But yeah, so TJ, thanks for coming on last minute and stuff. And I would love to talk about how he has helped you, in your relationship with God and where you're at. And we can be completely honest. Like before we started this, you said, I am a creaster.
Oh, 100% creaster for sure.
I show up on Christmas and Easter, man.
Yeah, church,
and we've been trying to get
Easter
you to come to church over and over. And every time I see you, it's like, yes, we're so happy.
Well, it's like I logged so many hours when my dad was on the worship team with you. So it's like, I know that's not an excuse, but I'm like, I was there for so long.
Yeah.
I was there for 4 services a weekend for like 12 years. It's like I've been there, done that. Not that I shouldn't be there more often, but I still am kind of a creaster, mainly because, I grew up in church with my family, obviously with my dad. And then I found Taylor, my wife, and she is from pretty much the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So, I can speak on that.
Yeah.
Our family don't go to, no one's ever really went to church. Right. No one has religion or anything background with that.
Yeah. So, she's open to it. And I'm not going to speak on her behalf on her beliefs and all that stuff, but it's cool because I've been trying to get, you guys, I listen to your podcast and I hear you guys saying, try and lead your families. And then so I've been doing that a little bit here and there, a little bit stepping out like my dad. Cause it's funny that you said all that stuff about my dad because he was so, if you knew him like I did, introverted.
Yeah.
He is not an extrovert whatsoever.
Which is funny because you say that and I don't see that.
Yeah.
From the times I've interacted.
Well, it's funny because it became more of that when he became closer and closer and closer to God. Like he just let go of the introvertness. He didn't want kids. He told my mom, I don't want kids. My mom medically was supposed to not be able to have kids. They ended up having 4 and 13 grandkids.
Dang.
So my dad was kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
But he said, obviously, most dads are like, that was the best thing that ever happened. So I'm like, well, thanks. Cool. I'm glad that is. So,
good thing is stubbornness didn't win out.
No doubt. He would have been driving a lot nicer car earlier though. That's for sure. But,
so you say introvert, did you ever see him? Did he communicate with people he didn't know about God? Have you guys seen that?
It's like, I really honestly think if it wasn't for the nudges that he felt from God, he wouldn't have. You say the number, he would see the number. He wrote in his journals, he's like, I saw this person, felt like I got a nudge, like I need to go pray for him. But he's like, his introvert said, I'm maybe next time.
Yeah.
He starts driving down the road and then he gets hit with a 911. He turns his car around and goes back and prays for him. And they get healed on the spot.
Yeah.
Dang.
I've heard a couple different times where he did that. One time I was with him and this person, had leg issues, throwing their back out. One was shorter than the other. He said, sit down. He prayed for him. And he goes, now stand up. And they're like, oh, it's better. It's still a little bit. He goes, then sit back down. The guy's not done yet,
Yeah.
And he starts praying again. And he holds the feet out. And when he first started, one was like a good 1.5 inches, 2 inches shorter.
Yeah.
And after he got done praying the second time, he goes, pull your feet out. And they were lined up perfect.
Wow.
And I mean, could you say, maybe she was, that person was sitting weird, shifting her hips or whatever. But they said immediately it was gone. Her back and hip pain was gone. And then he checked with her a couple weeks later. He saw her and she's like, since that day, it's been great. I've not had problems.
Well, it's because of him, man, that I would do the same thing. Cause my natural tendency is the same thing. If I feel a nudge, I want to go the other way. Yeah. And then at the same time, if I did step out and pray for somebody, as soon as I'm done, I want to run. Because what if it didn't work?
I'm out of here. Yeah.
What if it didn't work? I don't even want to ask him because that's awkward, right? I didn't want to ask him if it worked or not. Yeah. And he was the type that's like, tell me right now. How's it feel? Oh, we'll pray again. Just that type of faith, man. I'm just like,
probably it's like, there's a part of it's like, if God made me turn around to deal with this right now, I'm not leaving until it's fixed.
There's a reason.
My dad had that mentality. He's like, there's a reason. So I'm not going to drive all over here for it to not be specifically a reason that God wanted.
Man, and hearing that, I'm almost jealous of that, I guess, faith, because I've never been in that predicament. I wouldn't say in my, where I've had that check feeling of like, hey, pray for this person. It's going to happen. You know what I mean? I still pray for people and stuff like that. But I mean, I've never had that, connection, I guess, like that.
Yeah. I've had one instance where I can say it's back in COVID and we were down in Florida and it was Shauna's little, well, I guess it's our nephew, but it's on her side of the family. He is one of those dudes that just bounces off the wall and he was sick and to the point where he just wanted to lay in bed. Normally kids like that, even if they're sick, they're bouncing off the wall. And I'm like, man, this is bad. Like spiking a fever and stuff. So they take him to go get checked out, get a COVID test, and he's back on the bed. And I just felt like we should be praying for him. So we went as a family, prayed for him. And then I had this like feeling where I knew it was from God. Like, you need to go pray for him again. And so I went by myself into the room and prayed over him again. And then I had like, and I don't get this often, probably most of the time not, where it was like, he's going to be healed. Like, I just felt it. I felt this confidence, and I'd never, because I'm a doubter, I never have this confidence. And I even told Sean, I go, he's going to be healed tomorrow. And then the next day he was bouncing off the walls. They get a message back from the doctor that he doesn't have COVID. And it's like nothing ever happened.
Nice.
And I'm going, that was God. That was a miracle. That was a
Chalk
healing.
It up for a win for God.
And the thing with Kevin is he saw that time and time again. Like, he was praying for people and he was seeing miracles like that. And I think that's what built his faith, because it actually got to a point where it became a burden for him. And I don't know if you can speak into this part, TJ, but I remember talking to him because when we'd have prayer services at church, people would line up for his line. There'd be other people praying, and they would want to line up in Kevin's line because he's the one that's healing everybody, right? And so,
well, he's just doing the praying part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what people think.
Did you ever like that aspect, seeing your dad in that? Did you ever see him struggle with that, as far as like, people think I'm doing it, like it ain't me?
He would struggle, and he writes it in his journal, which I have here with me. I don't know the specific spot, but he references a few times where he's like, I've prayed for so many people and I've seen God's miracles happen over and over. But why, when I pray for this specific person, does it not work? Yeah. You know, what's going on? And so he struggled with the fact, like, is it my faith? Like, was I had stronger faith then and I didn't for this person, or, you know? And so he did mention that a few times. And I remember talking to him a few times, driving around at work or whatever, and he'd talk about stuff. But the one thing I do know is he never claimed that it was him. Yeah. Ever. He's like, oh, it's, I'm the next coming Jesus. No, he didn't do anything like that. You know, it was Jesus, it was God. It was never him. He was just
doing glorify God.
Yeah, he's just glorifying him. And
but the people definitely felt like there was something different about
a connection.
Him. Yes. Yeah. And like one thing that he told me, and I noticed that he was kind of like stepping back a little bit.
Yeah.
From praying. He did. Because it was getting crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, we were having renewal services is what we called them. And literally it would just be like, it was a little more Pentecostal type feel. And people would come up and like,
he did reference that.
Yeah. And he'd pray. And his line, I'm telling you, would be down the aisle. And it got to a point where he's like, I was feeling this heaviness and this burden. Like, I had to do this for people. Mm-hmm. And he was like, God spoke to him and was like, I didn't call you to be the prayer guy, Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why he was kind of stepped back from it a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, I would agree.
That's crazy.
I would agree. He never, put it on himself. Like he was.
I remember special. That. I remember the era when he was like, I feel like I need to not. And I think that was kind of at the same time he was kind of becoming, less involved in the church directly for odds and end reasons. But I think that was the time where he was like really stepped away from being actually in the church facility. Because I think he was getting a little overwhelmed, and it started to create doubts and all this stuff that he never had. And then, so when he did that, he was like, he started sitting quietly at home and just having, sitting quietly, talking to God, like he's sitting in the room right next to him, journaling it out. And that helped him get back to like a baseline of, okay, everything's calming down. Yeah. Yeah. He's like, it wasn't like a rock star. But it was, he's like, I don't even get there because it's not about me. Yeah. It was never
You don't
that.
want to get prideful.
Yeah. And you definitely can. I mean, like you look at some of these big churches and, you get to the point where people start coming because of you or whatever. And Sean and I have talked about this, being up on stage, it's really tough because people come up and they're like, oh, you did such a great job. And I love that song. Or, and I've written songs before and people are like, oh, you need to put that out. You make so much money and this and that. And it's like, it just feels weird. Yeah. And how do
that ain't what it's about, why you're doing it.
How do you say you appreciate the encouragement, but then shine the light on the Lord without it being weird? It is a weird balance. And you can get to the point where, at least for me, pride is a thing that I've always got to check myself on, where you can feel like, oh, I'm making things better. and it's like, no, God is using me
to make things
better.
better.
And he doesn't need me to do any of his work.
Yeah. Why do you think it is though? My question there is, why do you think it is that he uses some people in that way and some people not? Is it a faith thing? That's where you were just talking about with like, hey, why didn't I heal this person, but I healed this person? Or, why didn't that happen?
I think,
is it a faith thing? Is it he just works different people, different angles?
I think it's like, I think my dad always thought of it as, he was very strong in his faith and so stuff started happening and it was kind of creating like a gray area when it started getting real crazy. So it was like, I guess he couldn't keep a more direct line as easily as he was. So it's like, I don't know.
And I don't know if it's so much
because there's people out there that struggle with that. Like they're like, hey, I prayed for this, and this, and this, and nothing's happening.
Yeah.
There's nothing going in my way or my direction. Like, what is he not hearing me? Is he, why aren't these things happening? Is my faith not strong enough? Is it just because it's not his will?
Yeah. My thing, I just believe that it's not his will,
Yeah.
Cause I just believe that he has a bigger picture of what's going on and he might be using a certain situation, for good later, and I just have to trust that,
And you say the trust, right? So that's where I land is I trust that he has people in what spots he wants them in. Like for me, it's talking to that stranger and just talking to somebody and having that conversation. That's the way I lead in with God, with every person I've ever talked to.
Yeah.
And it's having that connection. I have that connection. You know what I mean? I can do that. Not everybody can do that. So I think he used our gifts, you know what I mean? And that was one of his gifts, clearly.
He had very strong faith in the fact that if he prayed, people would be healed. But he had very weak faith, in my opinion, from reading his journal, in God's being able to provide abundance to you.
Mm-hmm.
So he always struggled. One of his main things was finances. There was always an anxiety, of his. And I'm like sitting there going, I'm reading this and I'm like, how can you have such strong faith in the healing aspect of God, but not on the provisions that he can provide? And I think that maybe the reason that God was working those miracles so often in his life was to show him, I can do this. Why can't I do that for you? Mm-hmm. You need to see that I can do that for you.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how.
Well, there was some stuff with your dad though, that you would get to a certain point in conversations. Cause I loved having spiritual conversations with him, but it would get to a certain point where I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. There was always a point, like I would tell him like, I don't deserve, his love and this and stuff. And he'd be like, yeah, you do deserve it. You deserve all of it. You deserve this and this and this. And I'm like, it doesn't feel.
I don't know if it's as much as deserving because it's like, I just feel like, obviously God is as a father, right?
Yeah.
So I always
wants what's best.
We've had this.
We've talked about this a million times, me and Dustin. And I'm like, I just feel like his love is unconditional. So whether you're doing good, bad, or otherwise, it's an unconditional love. You don't have to do all this to get God's approval, his love. It's there no matter what. It's just yours to take. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, I don't deserve it, you're not. He's handing it to you. It's an olive branch.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it's probably more of just like you're playing with semantics.
A little bit here and there.
Because like to me, it's like, we don't deserve it. But like, that's the whole point of grace,
right?
Yes. And stuff and his mercy. But at the same time, like we talked about, we have that sinful nature in us. And to me, if I get to the point where I feel like I do deserve it, that's where my pride creeps in. That's where I'm self-seeking. It makes it more about me. That's where I need to be careful. And that's maybe just me, because I know that's a tendency in me to where I want to push back a little bit.
I guess that's true. I guess it's true. If you think of it as like a father thing, it's like, even though your father loves you, there's times where I don't really deserve it because I could be doing better.
Yeah.
I don't listen to your rules. I don't clean my room like you want me to, whatever.
You say that, father, and that's exactly a great way to, analogy for it, I guess, is, I love my kids, dude. I unconditionally love them. I always will. Mm-hmm. Will they do wrong in life? Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt about it. Will I correct them and correct their behavior and correct things? Yeah. I will. As their father, I will.
Some subtle nudges, some not so subtle nudges.
And maybe some hard nudges. I mean,
well, at the same time though, you wouldn't give them $1 million right now because that maybe they're not ready for it.
If their heart's in the right place and their faith is in the right place.
God would wait for you to get to where you're ready to have that $1 million.
Because I see as a father, I see as them as a kid, I see more in their future and what's ahead in their future.
Because you have a different perspective.
Yes, 100%.
You know, and I look at like, why is this person not healed and this person was? And I look at it in the grand scheme of life and I'm like, well, everyone's going to die. That's 100% certainty, right? Kevin was the most stubborn, like, oh, God's going to heal me, you know, to the point where like, he's not listening to a doctor or whatever, because he's like, whatever, you know, he had that type of mentality, which is awesome.
Well, it was that on top of the fact that he's like, and if he doesn't, he doesn't.
Exactly.
Like, I'm fine either way.
Yeah. You have like an eternal perspective, you know, to where it's like, I'm good. And I think he proved at the end of his life, like when he was really bad off, like he's good.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what was so cool about it. But like we get so caught up though in the world we live in the life. And it's like, why didn't this guy get healed? This person, whatever. Like our life is really, if you think about it and you really believe in eternity and believe all this is real, it's just like a little speck on the radar, you know?
It is, yeah.
And so that's God has this like huge perspective and we're just like living in this world, which is a speck in eternity. And so we'll just never understand some of this stuff until we get there.
We won't until we do.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I want to dig into these 9/11 things because you guys were telling a few stories before this, and it's really cool to hear because I've never heard or seen anything like that. But you referenced a couple verses. One was Psalms 91:1. It says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." And in the study portion, I read that as well, and it says, "Where the godly find safety under protective wings of the Lord." So you guys, and I told you this a minute ago, you guys are seeing these 9/11s pop up, you know what I mean, in certain circumstances. You've seen them while he was alive, even like in your life and with your kid being born. I'd love to share that story, but to me, that's the blanket. Like, but God's protection's over you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really cool.
And it's always in instances when you're looking for it.
Yeah.
At least for me. And I know TJ, you said that same thing. You're feeling anxiety or whatever. And like all of a sudden you see it.
A lot of times I'm not looking for the number, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, I am stressing out or I'm super anxious about this or having a bad day thinking about my dad, which thank God doesn't happen often. Cause obviously I don't dwell on the fact that he's gone. I know where he's at. So I'm not, you know, some people take, you know, parents dying differently, but
100%.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm weird because of how much I haven't really mourned. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of times where it's come up, you know, I'm stressed out about work now that he's gone. He ran the company. I was his right-hand man. And, you know, I'm drive the same way to and from work every day. I had my first bad day in months and I'm like following this pokey butt driver and I'm like, I was so stressed out.
Testing your patience.
I'm like, I'm taking a right on this road. I know I get home that way. So I take a right. Tears welling up, starting to cry. And I get over this hill and on the sign, it just 9/11. That's it. Nothing else on it. Wow. Just the number. Jeez. And immediately all that went away. Yeah. I just felt peace. I was like, all right, this is, you know, God's in control. My dad's good to go. Like I'm good. Everything was good. So simple things like that. And then, you know, there's times like when my daughter was born and 2017, Taylor was struggling, you know, doing her best as a mom to perform a miracle, you know, and it was not going well. And I was really stressed out. I was worried about Taylor's health. I was worried about the baby's health. And it's about 9. It's a little bit before 9. My dad texts me. He goes, "It'd be so cool if she was born at 9:11 p.m." And I'm like, we'll see. I'm kind of busy right now, you know? And sure enough, gets past 9/11. I'm like, oh, all right, well, he's gonna be bummed, but whatever. We're in the middle of this, you know. And daughter's born like shortly after, like around 9:20, between 9:20 and 9:30. And so the nurses take her off and do the measurements and stuff. And I hear the nurse yell, 9 pounds, 11 ounces. And I was like, oh my God, you gotta be joking. I'm like, all right, everything's good. Like she's gonna be fine. I'm like, Taylor looks like she's gonna die. And the doctors are doing their best.
But you knew immediately like this is gonna be okay.
Yeah. I was like, all right, well, it's in his hands. She's gonna be fine. You know, she survived, honestly, barely, but by the grace of God, she survived that.
She was in bad shape.
She was, really low blood count was not good for her. And she's probably got discharged way too early, but that's a whole nother story. But But when I saw that, I was like, we're good. So I texted my dad. I said, yeah, I missed 9/11 by this much. I said, but she weighs 9 pounds, 11 ounces. And he's like, no way. He's like going crazy. He's calling all his brothers and sisters like, you'll never know, dude. 9 pounds, 11 ounces. He was so happy. He's freaking out. So yeah, he loved that.
Cool,
so
man. Yeah. When I found out, that your dad had passed, and I remember I'm asking God, like, hey, will you just give me some type of like assurance that he's up there with you? And immediately after praying that prayer, I looked down and it was 9/11, and I wasn't looking for that. And so I'm like, this is crazy. And I didn't want to bother you because it was so early on. I didn't want to text him or anything. And so I shot him an email. I'm like, he'll get it when he gets it. I just wanted to tell him that story, just to encourage him or whatever. And he doesn't get it till like the next day or whatever. And he was kind of struggling at the time too. And he said they were just hanging out in the morning and his daughter was playing with like a little police car or something.
No, it was just her tablet. She was on her tablet watching YouTube. Yeah.
And she goes,
I remember now.
She's like, hey, Dad, 911, and just yells it out.
She goes, it's 9/11 right now. Isn't that crazy? I was like, what?
Yeah. And it was just in a time where he was kind of like in a bad spot. And then later on that afternoon, he catches my email and actually reads it then. And so it's like on top of that, you're hearing that story from me and just the timing of it and stuff. It was really cool, man.
Well, it sounds like it's circumstances where, there's something going on or there's a struggle, and it's something that pops up like God's provision over you or like safety over you in a blanket.
Right. And it doesn't have to be 9/11. My dad always said that to me. He's like, that's a thing that I've noticed. And it always seems to correlate really well with, my situations. And obviously it's jumped over to me. I've noticed it a lot. It's a big thing in our family, but he always said, like, when you talk to other people, he'd tell them those stories and be like, it may not be 9/11 for you. It could be something else that has a meaning to you that all of a sudden is going to be popping up more frequently or whatever.
And I got a story for that.
No, okay.
And so like we did this worship night at church and your mom was struggling on whether she should come or not. And then whether she should drive your dad's car or not. Cause he has like this sweet, like convertible car and stuff. Like literally when you turn, like the seats hug you and stuff.
Yeah, it's dumb.
It's nuts.
It's cool.
But anyway, so she's struggling with
I always seen them rolling around Delton and all sorts of stuff in that thing.
Yeah.
Dude.
So she's struggling on whether to even come and then whether or not to take the car. She decides to take the car. She's on the way to the worship night and she's driving and she's praying like these type of prayers to God, like, God, give me a sign or something. And this is the most, like, it's to the point where if I didn't know her, I would think she's crazy. But she said right when she's praying for God to give her a sign, a bald eagle swoops down in front of her car and for about a mile flies in front of her car, like kind of like
That's
leading the way. And the bald eagle was a big part of their life because they had a couple bald eagles that lived in their backyard in the trees. And so, and I think she said they hadn't seen him in a while.
They haven't. No. Yeah. Before that night, they didn't see him for a while.
And so she said, as soon as she's praying that, like he swoops down and just flies in front of the car.
Like that's her. That's one of her things. Like she does get the 9/11 occasionally, but a lot of times I'll get a text message. She goes, "Oh my God, I was struggling this morning. I went out on the deck and the bald eagle just flew down right in front of me, right down through the pond, went up in the tree, and I was good. It was just like, yeah." So I was like, okay, that's your thing. She's patriotic.
Yeah, it's just nuts, man. And you can't.
It's not a coincidence.
No, you can't call that a coincidence.
Yeah, people get out of control with the word coincidence. I think to me because it's like, dude, you can't put that in that category.
No, it's a bit of a pattern after so many times. At first, I was like, okay, Dad, 9/11. Okay, I'll let you do your thing.
You're like, whatever, man.
And he would ramble on. I mean, if you get him, I would always take him on service calls, and vice versa, he would take me because he needed somebody to be doing the job. Well, he yapped about God to anybody. It would usually start off as like small talk, and eventually it was God almost all the time. And that was one thing, like at his, celebration of life, like my mom called it. What so many people, they kept on coming up to me going, they tell me stories and they say, "I'm sorry for your loss," and I'd be like, "No, I'm sorry for yours." I'm like, "Geez, Pete, dude, I didn't know how important my dad was to you." They'd tell me story after story. I'm like, "Can you write this down?" Like, I was like, it's pretty sweet to learn about that. So.
He was unashamed, man.
I'm like,
was there ever a time, like, you sounds like you were with him a lot during a lot of this. Like, did you ever get sick of hearing it?
There was, well, it's funny. When I was younger, I would be like, young guy, dumb, like, let's just talk about, Lions won or whatever. I was a sports kid. I still am, but like, I would just talk about random crap. Oh, I golfed really good the other day, talk about that. And he'd always somehow turn it into change the story. Like, yeah, you know, at one time I was golfing and these guys told me not to hit this shot. I said, I'm just going to hit over the trees. And I just said a little prayer and hit it and land on the green. And then it turns into a God story. I'm like, oh, dude, okay. All right, where are we going with this, you know? And, you know, it was a lot of times I'm like, oh, God, here we go. And I used to zone it out. And then eventually I was like, you know what? Maybe there's something I need to listen to here. So I'd start listening and we'd have some pretty good conversations. I was very blessed my dad told me, he's like, I don't want you working for me right out of high school. He goes, you need to go work for somebody else and know what it's like. I don't want you to be the boss's kid, you know? And I'm like, all right. So I applied to like a ton of places. Never heard from anybody. And then finally it was like a few months after I graduated, still no job. My dad's like, I'm not going to have a bum kid. Like, just come work for me. So I'm like, all right. So I went and worked for him and I had 15 years of working with him, which was awesome. So yeah, a lot of fun stories, a lot of fun rides.
Where was, I guess, how did your faith progress to where it is now? You know, like, was it towards the end of his life it kind of grew, or was it kind of like after he passed, you start to have that perspective of like, okay, man, is there more to this?
Oh,
you know?
For sure. I lived in Plainwell, went to Plainwell Assembly of God for years. I was one of those churches like Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, sometimes strict. Saturday. If you're not there, we're going to ask where you were. Like, it was just one of those. I was like, okay. So my dad we went there because his parents went there. And then we went and visited TBC because Jay Taylor, my grandpa,
another great dude,
said, amazing. Come out, you know, and check it out. So we went to a Christmas concert there and my dad was hooked. He's like, we got to get the heck out of here and get the heck over here. So we moved to Delton and I was, you know, from 5th grade till high school, after high school, up to pretty much senior year. I was there almost every weekend that my dad was playing. And so, I was pretty in depth, you know, learned all the basic stuff. Because he played
on the worship team too, right?
Yep.
Played bass, right?
Yep. Slap the bass.
Slapping the bass.
But so we went there. I was pretty deep, would go all the time, was, you know, always felt comfortable, growing, going to youth group, all that fun stuff. And then it was basically when my dad stopped going, I was kind of like, oh, well, if he's not going, he's the church nut of the family. If he's not going, then maybe it's not 100% necessary. So, and then, you know, obviously I'm dating, so it's like, oh, go to church for an hour, hang out with my girlfriend, you know, that type of dumb stuff. But,
all the worldly stuff takes priority.
Yeah, so I got away. I still am away from the church building more than I like to be. I'm not one of those people that personally thinks you have to be there every weekend. I think what I learned from my dad since he became more of a creaster and kind of got out of it, and watching how he would still be able to have that connection strongly with God, that it's like he always emphasized when he'd pray, he's like, it always comes back to just a relationship. Yeah. So like, I don't go to church every weekend like a lot of people think you should, and I do think it is a great place to go. Don't get me wrong. And I do want to go there more often. I've been working on Taylor and we've been trying to go a couple times a month. Yeah. Soccer kind of got in the way and whatever worldly stuff. So
a church though. So we are the church, obviously, but church to me, what it's turned in for me is just a community. You know what I mean? It's a community of fellow believers. 100%. And I think that's why it's important to go, because you're pushing yourself with other believers and building that community. I mean, that's what it is to me. I don't go necessarily to, I got to hear this message today.
Like, for instance, the way I think of it, and I think my dad kind of thought of it too, it's like, if you're hanging out with a large group of people, how close of a connection can you make with an individual? Yeah. So you're trying to make a connection with that individual, which is God. Yeah. So it's like, you can be just as distracted at church as not at church from 100%. God. Yeah. So he spent a lot of time personally, like hours, he'd go up into a study and just sit and be with God.
Well, that's what I mean. So he wasn't necessarily just saying, hey, I'm not going to go to church and not do anything. Right. No, he was in his word. He was praying.
That's kind of where I'm at. I'm been wanting to get more into the actual word, but like, it's a every day. I wake up in the morning. It's like he's sitting next to me. I'm talking with God all the time. And sometimes I'm like talking to myself out loud in the car. Yeah. Well, not myself, but talking out loud in the car. So I feel like I have a solid foundation from obviously my upbringing, and you know, there's got to be something to it if I feel comfortable, like it's my best buddy sitting in this car seat next to me and I can just talk with him and lay stuff on him. And then I get these things like the 9/11 on the sign or whatever, you know, and it's kind of like, I don't really hear a lot of sometimes I don't really hear some people like, I heard God's voice telling me this. And I haven't gotten that maybe a couple times where I'm like, maybe that was it. I've kind of get so.
Yeah, we always describe it as like nudges.
Yeah,
it's more like
you feel it.
There's times where I do kind of feel like I can hear it, like in a sentence.
Well, it's almost like
in
yourself.
my head.
It's almost like yourself telling.
Yes,
it's
like your own voice
going like, you should do this, and it's like my normal self wouldn't tell me to do that. So it's like maybe that's not me. I don't know.
What do they call it? Is it called your conscience or whatever? Like I feel like
that's the Holy Spirit.
That is your Holy. That is the Holy Spirit speaking to you, saying, "Hey, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should be doing this."
Well, let's be honest though. Like I would say, the majority of people just go to church on Sunday, just show up and do the thing, and don't live it out.
Like a check on the box, the weekly box.
It's like the opposite of what he's talking about.
Yeah, and so that's the difference, and that's where I can see where you're saying, but we're trying to push people to actually get involved and connected. That's the difference. Like you can make that Sunday experience. You can get that by watching a YouTube video or whatever.
And I think the reason my dad was able to somewhat thrive without being in a church is because I saw him connecting every day with people in a church mindset. Every day at jobs, he would be off to the side, not preaching, but just
sharing
stories and asking people how they're doing and showing the connections. Like they'd say something, he's like, that's a God thing, or this is this. And
dude,
it's just subtle. And
that's what we're talking about with the difference between relationship and religion. Religion says you need to come on Sunday and Wednesday and do this thing and make sure you hit Sunday school afterwards. Your kids got to go to Sunday school, and make sure you do a devotional every day and read this amount of scripture every day, and like make sure all these things are done. And you could do all those things and totally miss a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And so that's what we're saying is like,
it's kind of like doing the homework and failing the test.
He was almost like, he was almost like really heavy relationship, but like, he was showing it in the way he was living his life, though. Like the fruits were showing up.
Well, and he had other people around him. I know that for a fact. Like he had other leaders and stuff that were with him and walking with him as well.
He was a heavy influence on Brian Moe, who's lead pastor at my church now. So he was very connected. He was connected with Jeff Arnett. I know personal friends of mine that are still on staff at TVC that like he was like that to them, a father figure. Like his picture is up in John Hook's office right now, because he was such an influence on him. Yeah. So he was living it out. He is what we're trying to get people to understand.
That's what I'm saying. So he didn't need to go to church. Yeah. He didn't need to show up Sunday. He was the church, man. He was living it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so important to get connected. And that's what it is. Like church service on Sunday is we're trying to get our people in here to connect and worship God together.
Right.
Problem is most people show up, hide in the back, do the thing. I don't want to say most people, but like a lot of people just come in, I check the box, I leave, and I go back to my life, so.
Well, I would push you, in an aspect of just finding that community for you. It doesn't need to be a church.
The funny thing is we've tried 3 at one church, and we're going to try, we're going to do more. That wasn't like, we're going to do 3 and be done.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was kind of shocked when I was talking with Taylor about it. I was like, you want to start going to church? She's like, yeah, maybe we can like slowly go, maybe every couple weeks. Cool, it was during soccer season and stuff. And, when I first met her, we had talked about stuff like that. And it didn't seem like it was ever going to really be super on the radar. But I was like, all right, well, I let it go, and just live my life and tried to show her through, how I lived, hey, this is cool. Yeah. So it's cool. I'm excited because I definitely want to keep going. And honestly, more or less, we want to get in there for our kids too.
Yeah,
I was just going to say
Kinsley and Cameron in there. And the funny thing was, I feel like I've been dragging it with Kinsley. She's 8. I'm like, man, I was in church way before 8.
Yeah.
And I kind of have this feeling like, I need to get in there. And the funny thing was, how YouTube is. Kids go down a rabbit hole and just get the dumbest stuff just bad stuff. And I'm just watching Kinsley on her and her stuff's Jesus videos.
Yeah.
And she's not even like, she didn't even really notice anything. She didn't know anything about him. And then so I'm like, okay, cool. Well, God's just showing up without my help, without me getting her there, which I should. I'm like, I'm sorry, maybe I should try and get her in there.
I know.
But yeah, she loves it. And Cameron, he's 3. So he likes hanging out with kids and playing
I'm like
with
the
toys,
opposite where like my daughter is naturally in all of it because we work at a church. But then I'm like, am I doing enough? Like, or am I just letting the church take care of it, you know? And so that's my internal struggle too, is like, I got to keep leading my family. I got to make sure I'm praying with her. I'm like, we're trying to learn verses together and stuff. But it's like sometimes you can just like, oh, it's getting taken care of. So I can just like sit back and.
Yeah. I took it more of like oops, my bad.
Yeah.
But Kevin led a legacy, dude. Like he left a legacy of like, this is the way this is the way I want to show my family. I feel like it's a good example of how we should lead our families. Yeah. You know what I mean? You want to pass that down. You don't want to end it. And the only way to do that is to actually live it out and do it.
Yeah. So, it was like anytime we had a problem growing up, like just whatever, something dumb going on at school or whatever, my dad would give us a normal dad talk, and it would always end in how God works in that situation. And then it's or a prayer at the end, like, hey, I'll just pray for you. Get rid of your stress. Who cares what that girl thinks, or who cares what happened with your buddy? Like, none of that matters.
Man, I get the eye roll from Boston if I did that, dude. No doubt about it. At 13 years old, no doubt about it.
Well, it's like, on my dad's side, my grandparents were very super religious and good people, but they were front row church. Their seats were assigned. They did not by the church, but by them. Yeah, they were like, don't sit in my spot. This is Ed and Judy's spot.
Yep.
And, growing up, my dad was like, we never had money growing up. And it's because my grandpa was a biochemist at Upjohn, made it good money.
Yeah.
But he spent it all on outreach for church. It was gave it to people, gave it away. And my dad just grew up like, we got to share a loaf of bread for a week. Like, he would get to the point where he worked at a bike shop at like 12 years old, and he'd buy his own groceries and put them in his room. And it's like, I don't get,
I got to fend for myself.
I got to provide for myself because my parents. So it's funny how strong his faith got, because there was a lot of things growing up where it would have pushed him away. Like, I'm not getting what I want as a kid, because God's guy is so important to you guys. So you're going to all these people's houses and just giving away our money, and there was aspects of that where it drove him nuts, but he obviously looked back and was like, they did good. And so it kind of helped him get through that. But
built a good foundation.
The Petzold side is, out of all the Petzolds, my dad was the least religious out of all.
Wow.
But he probably has one of the strongest faiths out of all.
I was going to say he was the least religious, but had the strongest relationship.
Yeah, I would say that. I would argue it. And that's not anything, that's not negative. And my Petzold family listening, I love you guys. You guys are great. But it just felt like it's like, they were much regimented, go here, do this. I had a graduation party and they brought an acoustic guitar out and we're singing worship in my living room at my graduation party. I'm like, this is what my baseball team's here. Why are we doing this right now? Like,
that's cool though, man.
It is. But
that's cool.
Well, high school senior, you're like, guys, come on. You're kind of embarrassing me right now, but I shouldn't have been. Like, it's cool. But
that's what Jesus did, man. He always would go off by himself to spend time with the Father.
Yeah.
And so that was cool that he would lived his life in that way. And he's living out that relationship that we're talking about and we're all striving for. Is there anything that you'd be willing to share in there to end off? Like, what's your favorite thing that like we could share?
I haven't read it.
Dude, I'm looking at this little journal that he brought because he's told me about it before. But dude, this thing is like in depth, like per 10 years, wasn't it? 2014 to 24?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's gaps here and there. But yeah, the Brian at one church, I remember that my dad joined the board. He's like, I don't know if I'll go here, but I'll be on your board.
Yeah.
And I remember Brian was really struggling he told me, he's like, Brian's really struggling about this building. He's not sure where it's going to go. And he goes, I just was praying on it. And I said, is Brian going to get this building? He saw 9/11. He immediately calls him Brian and is like, or text me. I don't know if it was call or text me. He's like, you're going to get this building.
Wow.
And then my dad passes. And it's shortly after that, I'm over there working on stuff for Brian, for some Wi-Fi stuff, IT stuff, Yep. And he goes, we bought the building, just like your dad told us we were going to end up in this building. He goes, we weren't sure. We thought maybe we would just have to merge or do whatever and share the building with the previous church. And goes, no, it's signed over. It's ours now. We're good to go.
Yeah, the story's crazy.
If you don't care, I'm going to end it.
Sure.
I'm going to end it with this right here, boys.
Yeah,
this is great. This is from his journal. This is from 9/22/14. It says, Lord God, my Father, please help redirect my heart back to you. It is so easy for me to try to pick things back up. I want to serve you with a humble heart and just to hear your voice. As I go through each day, things happen that make me start to make plans for tomorrow. Show me what are your plans and what are mine. I want what you want. Help me to continue to move outward focused person, not an inward focused person. I want to do for you, not for thanks of man. Make all my weakness your strength. Make my heart soft and open to your voice. Abba, You are my Father, and I love you. Draw me close to you, might push out all darkness from all who have put their trust in you. Thank you, Jesus.
Amen.